we can go ahead and get rolling. Do you want to do that, Michaela? Start us off with call to order.
Sure. I will call roll. Trustee Israel? Trustee Ross?
Here.
Member Albrecht?
Here.
Member Badgley? Member Bleeker?
Yes, here.
Member Brickman? Member Chen? Member Alisco?
Here.
Member Franklin?
Here.
Member Friedman? Member Hirsch? Member Cole?
Here.
Member Letter?
Here.
Member Matheson?
Present.
Member Papard?
Here.
Member Patak? Member Rago?
Here.
Member Robson? Member Skovic? Member Stash?
Here.
Member Vile?
Here.
Member Weiss?
Here.
Okay.
Joined late, I apologize.
I've got you marked present.
Thank you.
Michaela,
I
do
don't
you
know if you can
also-
hear. This is Doug Gerleman. I'm signing in, but I'm having a little trouble with my computer.
Okay, are there any members of the public that wish to speak about anything this evening that are not members of the Climate Action Planning Team?
Yes.
Yes, this is Doug Gerleman. I don't know if you can. I'm using my cell phone right now.
We can hear you, Doug.
You can. Thank you. Okay. I wanted to bring out one opportunity. Get my notes out here. I thought it's important to try to improve the energy conservation of homes. So, you know, a few years ago, this was in June of 2014, we did home energy assessments with blower door tests. And I'd like to be sure that the climate group understands how that process works, where you visit somebody's home, you put a fan in the front door or big window, you blow air out the window, creating a vacuum, and then you can walk around inside to detect where all the leaks are. It's very effective. You identify not only the where the leaks are coming up through the attic, bathrooms, laundry chutes, all kinds of places. And what it does when you find the vacuum, you can actually measure how much air is blown out of the house. This was done by Elevate Energy, and Bob, you may know these people. This is part of CNT, Center for Neighborhood Technology, and they started this in 1990, I think, 1999. Anyway, it's worked very effective. In my house, they found that I had significant leaks. They were measuring an airflow out of the house of 5,000 cubic feet per minute. By the time they were finished, it was down to about 2,700 cubic feet of leaks. And they just basically sealed up all of the, I still don't have my act together here. All of the vents, the different the plumbing stacks, things like that. Anyway, it's something that the village we could either bring in a consultant to kind of show how this process works. I had a dozen people that went through that evaluation The last one was somebody up in Fort Sheridan who just did it a year and a half ago. And they had tremendous savings too and reduction of the airflow through the house. The other thing I just wanted to mention quickly is that we all know that we have to find better ways of absorbing carbon. And right now, the emphasis of this group has been on planting trees, but we don't have enough space for many trees. So what a lot of places are doing, they're actually using different kinds of grasses. Even clover is very effective. You know, it opens up the soil and gets some microorganisms working, so they absorb carbon. And in California, they say grasslands, rangelands are much more resilient carbon sinks than forests. And so they've got a major program throughout the state to change the landscaping. And that's something that we could easily do here, change the parkway landscaping, get rid of the turf grass that's got very thin root system, and it basically blocks the carbon from going deep into the roots, because like I say, the roots are only an inch deep. So you need something with much deeper roots, and the prairie grasses have roots that are like 4, 5, 6 feet deep. So almost as deep as some of the trees that we're trying to find space for. So we could do
Thank
that
you
in
very
all of
much,
the parkways
Okay,
and
thank
encourage
you.
people to do it in their
Thank you,
house.
Doug. Thank you. Was there any other points?
Yes.
Just those two things. I'll have to send
Okay.
some
Are there
information.
any other
Thank
members
you.
of the public that wish to speak?
Yes, my name is Ying Wang. I also have a couple questions, 3 questions I have to ask. First, I listened to the first meeting from the YouTube that being recorded. I wonder if I can access to those meeting documents. Are those open to public? Because when I went to the website, payoblue.website, and they were asking for a password, so I cannot go in and read the report. And also, I know Ted and your company's done a greenhouse gas inventory report. So that report actually being reviewed and approved. I wanted to understand how it was calculated, partially because of my own research is in this field, and also wanted to know if Ted, you had worked with 42 or so cities on this. Do you have any case studies show that the successful case studies you had, and what kind of recommendations you had to those cities, and what's been done so far, and how are you tracking your progress for the goals you had, like 30% of reduction, greenhouse gas reduction by 2030 with the baseline of 2018, right? So I just wanted to know that. And also being a resident here, I want to know what else can I participate and to know more, not only just being listening through. These are my questions.
Okay, thank you. Just as a reminder to everyone in the group, when you're not speaking, please make sure you mute yourself. And then in terms of where you can find the documents, the village website, on the sustainability page, there's a link where it will take you to all of the draft documents. There are, I believe, 5 of them, as well as the survey document. All of that is accessible off of the Village of Northbrook website at northbrook.il.us, and then go to the sustainability page. In terms of other additional information that's all in draft format, that is password protected and is being worked on by the Climate Action Plan team at the moment, and that is not open to the public yet. As documents get finalized and more refined, then they get put on the village's website.
Thank you. I went to the village website. I didn't find those documents. That's why I listened to this YouTube, and I went to the paleblue.website. So I'll try again, but if I have any
I'll send
trouble.
you an email with the direct link. I've got your email address.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Excellent. And I'll respond for just a second. You had a few questions in there, but one question was about how to track sort of progress. And certainly I anticipate as the plan sort of comes to a conclusion in that plan, one of the recommendations that we tend to put in there as an overarching recommendation is for the community to do greenhouse gas inventories at some regular intervals. And then that enables an opportunity for the community to kind of track progress. And then as those updates happen, we'll be providing an implementation matrix, which enables tracking of implementation of the actions also. So you can kind of cross-reference the actions that are being implemented and how the impacts might be coming about in the inventory. So just to try to answer that question. Thank you very much. Okay, so I think we're at the next item in the agenda. Is that correct, Michaela?
Yep,
I think
and
so.
Tom also just shared in the chat function the direct link to the webpage.
Great, thank you. So I just wanted to take a couple minutes to kind of, so first of all, thank you everybody for attending tonight's session. I know it's tough to do these Monday nights. Thank you so much for your efforts, not just tonight, but between the meetings. It is very, very much appreciated by all of us and certainly by me personally. Also, Happy New Year. Let's hopefully have a great 2021 in comparison to last year. There were a couple things I wanted to sort of share before we move into the breakout sessions. The first is a couple tips related to the Action Finder. And what I wanted to do is just sort of reiterate, when we talked about the Action Finder and trained on it at the last workshop session, the intent of the Action Finder is to be a tool to just help provide a place for team members to do some brainstorming, to explore ideas, and to write new ideas. It is absolutely intended to be a tool that you can use as you see fit. And there are a couple tips in terms of what I think can be helpful in using it. So I just wanted to share those tips. The first is recognizing that there are some sections that have a lot of actions. And we did talk about that for instance, buildings and energy and transportation have a lot of actions. And so definitely do not feel an obligation to review all of the actions. That's just not necessarily. Certainly feel free to if you want to, but you don't need to look at all of the actions. Instead, think of the tool as trying to just help support you in exploring ideas. So I definitely encourage you to use the filters that are in the tool, whether you're searching by keyword or you just want to filter by some example cities that are perhaps in the region or similar size, so that you can just sort of mix and match the actions and collapse those back and forth to just look at the things that you're more interested in. So feel free to use those. If anybody wants any sort of tutorial on that, I am absolutely happy to do any kind of session. So just let me know and we can set something up or maybe even do a little group session. The second thing I wanted to point out is, and we talked about this also, that there are some themes that are repeated. There are some actions because this tool draws from multiple plans from multiple communities all over the country. There are some actions that are very common because as we all work on some of these goals, some highly successful ideas tend to float to the top frequently. So that means that as you scroll through different communities, you might see a similar action show up more than once. And so just what I'd like to suggest is as you do that, if you save an action and you happen to run across an action that's similar to it later on, if the second instance you think is better, save it. And if you can, I would suggest you unsave the earlier version or versions. If you can't find it or you don't want to take the time, that's okay too. The other thing you can do is just in your comments, type in something like, I like this version best, or something like that. And that'll help us understand what your intentions are as far as reviewing actions when we do go to start to consolidate. The third thing I'll point out is that, as you write new actions, you can write them in the Action Finder. Just go to the first available space and write in anything you want. And just make sure you type in new under your name so it's easy for you and others to find it in the future. You can also feel free to simply write your ideas, your actions, how you would like them framed, how you'd like them worded. You can write that in another document if you wish. It will eventually make its way back to the action finder because we'll use that as a way of collaboratively ranking our final list. But if you want to write something in a Word document or whatever, that's cool. And we'll work together to get it into the action finder at the right time before we move into the next phase. So just wanted to kind of open that up. Our team will be consolidating the actions before we move into the next step. And so consolidation, we do have a tendency if we see repeated actions, if it's in the same person's column, we may kind of try to consolidate actions. However, if it's unclear to us what the intention was, we may leave them because we don't want to delete somebody's work and accidentally undo something that somebody's looking to do. Sometimes folks want to see two different similar actions and then debate the finer points of the two. And so we don't want to accidentally step on anybody's work effort. So if we can figure out the two actions really are, we're only needing one, then we'll definitely consolidate. If we have any sort of hesitancy about what somebody's intention is, we may leave the two similar actions under your name. So that's why if you can be kind of choosy as you're saving things, it'll be best for everybody. But we will certainly, before we get done with all this, that'll all get consolidated. So you don't need to concern too much about that. So the next thing I wanted to share here at the beginning is just sort of an overview for tonight's intended goal and how it fits into the next couple workshops. So as per the agenda, tonight's intent is to have a discussion over two basic questions. One, which is what actions are you seeing that you think have potential for Northbrook? And the second, and perhaps most important, is what other ideas do you have or what are you not seeing? And so what I would suggest is each sub-team here can use your time as you see most fit. Each team might have a different pacing, different needs for discussion and collaboration. Feel free to embrace the conversation that your team needs to have. However, what I would suggest for tonight is rather than worrying about reviewing every single action that you've maybe saved or have some thoughts about, what you might want to consider is tonight's conversation being a sort of a more of a conversation along the lines of, what are the directions that you're seeing that pop out at you? What are you seeing or thinking that you like? And again, maybe even more importantly, what are you seeing? What do you think is missing? Because that will start helping the team sort of decide what needs to be created that we're not seeing, gaps that we think we need to fill in. So that's one way of thinking about tonight's discussion. You will absolutely have the opportunity to review all of the actions as we start getting a streamed down list, a short list version. The intent is to go through all of them together as a sub-team. So you will definitely have a chance to talk about all the actions as you wish. So again, you can get into that tonight if you want, or our suggestion is have a broader conversation, sort of a higher level conversation about things that you're seeing that are good directions, things that you think are needed. What's going to happen after this workshop is we are going to continue on identifying potential actions over the next few weeks with an intent of getting all of our thoughts on the paper. So that's why we're thinking having a conversation about what you think, what you're excited about and what you think is missing or what you're confused about from a more directional standpoint. So that then over the next couple of weeks, you can perhaps identify additional actions or write actions coming out of tonight's conversation. At our next workshop, we anticipate then beginning to move into consolidating that list and then reviewing for prioritization or against the criteria. I'll also point out that all teams kind of move at slightly different paces. So that's our intended agenda for the next workshop. We will flex it though if your team or sub-team needs more time. So if as we get through this next couple of weeks and the next task that we'll talk about at the end of the meeting, if you feel like we're just not there, your team isn't there or sub-team isn't there, just let me know and we'll flex what we do in the workshops, okay? So I just wanted to get that out there. All right, so and the next item was just sort of open it up for team members to see if there's any thoughts or ideas or comments anybody wants to share.
I'm just gonna, Ted, you're cutting in and out a little. I mean, I think we all got the gist of what you were saying, just so you know.
Okay, I'm sorry about
The
that.
audio's still a little choppy, but while you're getting everyone put into breakout groups, I'm just gonna reiterate, like last time, we're all gonna go into our little sub-teams, then we'll come back. We are gonna have 10 minutes between to report back, but these are gonna be really structured and timed, and that each team will have 3 minutes to report back, just the bullet point topics that you want collectively shared with the group as a whole. We're gonna try and stay on schedule, so be prepared for just a 3-minute summary after each sub-team when we report back. Are there any other questions or discussion points before we go into the first breakout group?
Michaela, sorry if I missed this, but is there somewhere where we're recording notes about things that we decide on today? Would that go right on the action finder?
You can do it right on the action finder, or if someone is more comfortable within each sub-team, taking notes by hand or typing them up separate and then adding them into the action finder later. It's however your sub-team is most comfortable working. I know some people, everyone's kind of at a different level of how they prefer working on these things.
Thank you.
So is the intent of this breakout session that we go in there and we discuss the ones that we've highlighted already, or we review all of them and highlight them as a group, or how, can you explain that a little bit further for me, please?
Sure, you bet. It's a good question. And I'm sorry if I cut out here. So the intent is, again, you can navigate the conversation as it feels best to the group. What I suggest, and typically what happens at this level, is a little bit higher level in terms of the themes that you're seeing that you know that you're attracted to, or that are starting to make some sense to you or feel good to you. You may pull out a couple actions specific that you're really excited about, or you think are examples of something you don't want to see, right? So you can identify some specific actions, but I suggest the conversation to be at a level of themes of things that you're seeing that you feel like are possibly good directions, as well as, again, perhaps things that you thought you'd be seeing that you're not, gaps that you're feeling, and you're not really, maybe you're not sure how to fill in that gap, but you just feel like, why I'm not seeing anything that is dealing with X, Y, and Z. And the reason for that point is to have a collaborative conversation. Other people might be seeing it or already know how to solve that gap. But the intent is to be able to come out of tonight's discussion with a sense of direction as to what other ideas need to be found or created in order to make sure that by the time we get to the next phase, you have all of your ideas on the table, so to speak. Does that make sense? Is there any uncertainty about that with anybody? Okay. I am, and again, not to cut anybody off here. We have another minute here. If there's any other question or thought anybody wants to share, I am almost done getting people into groups.
I guess I'll add something, just not to confuse anybody. I added a column for myself in the transportation and land use planning with some notes.
Remember, when you get into your sub-teams, to designate someone who will be kind of the note taker, who will present the 3 points when we report back to the group as a whole, kind of as your leader for today's session. Doesn't have to be the same person as last time. Share the fun.
All right, awesome. We've got the groups formed. Are we ready to whirlwind off? Does everybody feel comfortable with the task before us today? Any questions at all before I hit the trigger? Okay, going once, twice, 3 times. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in there. Hello, everybody. Welcome back.
Oh,
And Michaela, are you available to maybe help facilitate the feedback and I'll get the other
Yep.
ones ready.
Yep, while you're doing the next group, I will go through the breakout session discussions. All right, can we have a 3-minute summary from our transportation representative, transportation land use?
That would be me. So we came up with a few things. We want electric vehicles for all village, their fleet. We think the village should be a model so that the residents will see that the village is doing it. It looks good. Let me do it too. Good app for transportation. So like, you know what the bike path is, you know where the traffic is, you know where to walk, you know, where there's construction, stuff like that. And a lot of things can be put into this app. We think we need a full-time staff person to oversee the whole implementation. And maybe that staff person can even work with the other communities to like put together bike paths, you know, where can we connect these things? Implementing plans that are already approved, or at least better education to the public about what is being worked on, so that, you know, we've said bike plans, well, that's already been approved, and it's being implemented, but where's it at? And be accountable to the plan. So like, when are things going to happen? Like Steve was telling us, stuff from 2005 hasn't been done yet. But you know, we want accountability. And then mini parks, we like those.
Say that last one again.
Mini
Yeah,
parks,
well,
parklets.
Parklets.
Parks.
Mini
Parklets.
parks.
I just wanted to say downtown density too, Robin.
Okay.
No, I'm just saying, we also talked about having higher density near downtown or walkable to transit centers. But parklets, I'll let Aaron explain.
Yeah, and I think Steve was commenting that the zoning, it kind of is there or needs to be changed, but it was reviewed. Yeah, the parklets are kind of, you know, mini parks along your pathway to get people walking and out and about without building an entirely, you know, giant open space of parks. And, you know, picture a seesaw on the side of the road.
I think just filling in on what things that haven't been completed. We have a downtown plan. It's never been adopted, but we're currently working on downtown zoning, so which is actually geared to support that plan. So once we get the zoning in place, then it should be a quick shoot over to approve that downtown plan.
Okay, thank you, transportation and land use. Do we have someone from waste management to speak?
Yes, that would be me. We had 5 themes that we came up with. One is mandatory recycling for all. We were really thinking about equity here. So this would include single family homes, multifamily homes, and commercial. Having an education and communication campaign was our second one, focused really on composting, reducing waste, reusing things, and repurposing before we get to recycling. And then as far as recycling goes, being very clear with the community around what is allowable to be recycled and what is not. And importantly, having some data around when the recyclables are collected, what actually can be recycled and what ends up being thrown away, not only from city services, but also vendors that are providing this service in the private sector. Our third one was pie in the sky is a universal zero waste ordinance, but we realize that this may not be feasible or sustainable. And so to the extent possible, and again, looking through an lens of equity in terms of construction, residential, commercial, and also operating within the existing county ordinances. Our fourth one is the reduction of single-use items. So for example, plastic and paper bags at stores, there might be fees attached to that. Cutlery and other to-go items, giving people other options like not taking the cutlery or even being able to bring their own containers. And then also, this was a neat idea, including directions to promote recycling for the things that are single-use so that people know what to do with them. And then our fifth and final theme was around managing food waste. So looking at existing programs and coordinating with other entities to better manage that, whether it be donating or composting.
Thank you. That is a great lead in to the food group. Trustee Ross.
Yep, thanks so much. And we'll have some overlap here, which I think is probably a good thing, right, Ted? So we have a couple bullet points. One is indoor farming, hydroponics, which we had talked a little bit about last time as well. That would mean looking at our zoning code to sort of see how we'd have to make that possibly more flexible, and looking at the cost in terms of places, perhaps in empty warehouse space in the village or behind grocery stores. There's a program out of Israel, and a couple of grocery stores, I believe in New York, have done it. It's called Vertical Fields, and they have it behind grocery stores where they're building herbs and other things indoors. Another idea was looking into like public food forests and gardens, and potentially working with the local school districts, many of which have local gardens right now, but maybe looking into the idea of food forests, and with the park district as well, because food forests can be on smaller pieces of land. Another one is public education. So working with the library potentially to have monthly programs through the library on how to maintain a sustainable garden or yard for homes in Northbrook. And then we talked a lot about composting as well, and looking into maybe whether the village can sell compost bins like we do rain barrels at a reduced cost, or whether we could partner or work with a business who would essentially help do the composting, and then we would be able to sell it back at inexpensive rates to our residents. And we have a local business called The Organic Gardener, who is already doing some of these things with local communities and schools on the North Shore. So I think we're going to reach out to her and see what types of ideas she might have with respect to these initial thoughts. One thing I think I forgot to say is we also talked about encouraging food donation programs. So educating our local restaurants and grocery stores about repurposing food or donating food to shelters and other areas, and whether there would be tax incentives for that.
All right. Excellent. Well, superb feedback, everybody, and good summaries, and sounds like some good conversations going on. I am kind of rotating through the conversations, but trying to be an invisible fly. We've got the other room set up, and I think I've got everybody in the right room. I apologize for the mistakes on the first round, but I'm going to open them up, and away we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the main room. And Michaela, I don't know if you're available to shepherd the feedback. I'll get the other room set up.
Yep. All right. So since there's just 2 breakout groups, we'll do 4 minutes for each group. We'll start with buildings and energy. Who do we have to share highlights from buildings and energy?
That would be me. I am having a computer problem, so if it cuts out, we'll kind of have to double back to that, but hopefully it'll work out fine. So we started out discussing the encouragement of the existing stock of commercial buildings and how to get them more energy efficient. So I guess the big question was, well, how do you implement that? That kind of led into a pretty robust conversation with solar panels, photovoltaic arrays up on commercial buildings, and relationships between the commercial building owners and perhaps solar farm contractors, for perhaps a better lack of a better way to put it. And it was kind of felt that if there was an economic benefit to the building owners, so while they may not get the benefit from having the solar panels, but if the solar farm panel contractor would take care of the roof maintenance, that would be kind of a win-win for everybody involved, and the commercial building owners may be very receptive to that. Commercial building roofs are generally a nightmare and a big dollar cost item for commercial building owners, and a headache And if they can kind of get the benefit of the solar panels up there and get those people to take care of their roof, that certainly could be a pretty nice incentive. And whether it's treated as, or the other option would be to treat it as a tenant space, lease out the space of the roof to get the solar panels up there. But something between those two, or a variation of the two. But ultimately, there would still need to be some type of economic advantage to the building owner to kind of go that route. Kind of segued into the motivation versus mandates, if you will, for commercial building owners to become more energy efficient. And the example was brought up as an example right now. ComEd is still offering incentives to change out to LED lighting fixtures. Whether there's something else available in whether it's heating systems or something else, we really don't know, but perhaps that could be looked into, and there may be some other incentive things out there. Concerns with going more efficient, even with the LED, so that the ComEd LED stuff is working, and that's been out there for a number of years, is that typically on the commercial building side, the building owners own the equipment, but the tenants pay the electric bills. So there's kind of incentive, disincentive from both sides of that fence of doing it without a greater influence like from ComEd. It was brought up that there's an organization called PACE, P-A-C-E, the PACE program. If I recall, it was mentioned that they're using it in DC. I'm not sure if that's 100% accurate, but essentially the PACE program provides for the community to be able to sell bonds that will pay for energy efficient upgrades to commercial buildings, and then they get to be paid off over a longer period of time. So there's not that initial financial jolt. Either way, the theme kind of still kept coming back on the commercial side, that there has to be an economic model for it to make sense with the commercial building owners. It was brought to our attention as an example. One of the issues that they're seeing is with the new roofing codes, the insulation codes associated with roofing doesn't necessarily ever pay for itself. So the payback for the roof insulation might be upwards close to 40 years, but the roofs are lasting only 20 years. So using that kind of, I guess, as the example that whatever it is, it's got to make sense economically to the building owners. That segued into cool roofs, or the white roofs, green roofs, maybe a combination on any given roof. It could be a cool roof, a green roof, and PV systems. But the white roofs look as a promising thing. And like everything else, the incentives or how to get the word out, and a common theme kept coming back to education. How to get the building owners aware of some of the options, whether it's the white roofs or the green roofs. And then we kind of went back a little bit towards residential, and we're talking about the incentives to use LEED or WELS or one of the other energy programs that are out there, with the benefits that come from doing it or not doing it. I mean, it was discussed both ways, but it came up.
Any other highlight points, or?
Yeah, just to wrap it up, the ongoing sustainability of Northbrook-owned light poles, street lights, being changed out to LEDs, which is in progress, and newer ones have already been made or have already been installed as LEDs. That would be the summary.
All right, thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Sandy, would you like to take us? Oh.
I just
Sorry,
wanted to
Ted?
throw in two seconds. There is actually in the state of Illinois PACE legislation in place, and there is a Cook County CPACE, which means that it's available for commercial properties only. There is no residential PACE in Illinois. So there is a program that we can take advantage of. Just want to let everybody know.
Thanks, Ted. Sandy, do you want to take us through health and safety, please?
Sure. We seem to focus on three themes that kept coming back. One theme was the need for cooling centers, especially for our vulnerable populations. So it's a question of working with the village and the health department to, number one, establish the cooling centers, educate people as to the availability of the cooling centers, and then for particularly vulnerable people, perhaps have some kind of transportation system set up to help vulnerable people get to cooling centers. The next theme that we were talking about was what we can do in terms of the village code to improve air quality and reduce heat islands. We also talked about cool roofs, white roofs, green roofs, and also cool pavements, replacing, when asphalt needs to be replaced, replacing it with a permeable substance. And to what extent the village can lead by example in that effort, and also incentivize those types of efforts. Do we need changes in the village code to incentivize both businesses and residents to do similar things that will be modeled by the village? Perhaps something can be through the bidding process or the permitting process, whereby, you know, there's a payback, you know, there's a fee and then there's a payback to the fee if certain sustainability requirements are met. And the third thing, again, we keep coming back to the same themes: education, educating people so that they understand the risks of extreme heat events. Perhaps that needs to be done in multiple languages for our different residents. People understand the risks and the illnesses that can be brought on by heat events, and also what the village can do to help people in those regards, cooling centers and the like. We talked, oh, I'm sorry, going back to code, I missed one very important one. We were talking about what we could do is perhaps change the code, modify the code to require even more planting of green spaces. I know that's in the code to some extent now. What can we do to enhance that, to require more planting of trees for their cooling effects? And also for air qualities, and also what can we do to require or encourage more native plants instead of turf, for example, for roadside vegetation, perhaps by the creek bed, islands, you know, roadside islands. So there was that discussion. And then getting back to education, educating people as to air quality and also what people can do, educating people as to the air quality impacts of small machinery.
Okay, we've got to wrap up the points now.
Okay.
Sorry.
Excellent.
Okay.
Great feedback, everybody, and chime in. So I've got the other room set up, and again, I think I've got everybody in the right spot. If not, just let me know. So we're going to open them up. Hopefully everybody's been able to do some jumping jacks here as we go into the home stretch. So we'll see you in a little bit.
All right, I think we are all back together. We are going to start with the summary from Trustee Israel on water and wastewater.
Okay, our group, we noted after going through a couple of things for a little bit, we noted that reducing water consumption affects 0.4% of GHG. And we have a current natural reduction of about 7% per year. So all in all, we're doing pretty well. So we didn't really focus a lot of time on that, with the exception of, you know, taking a look and reviewing the use of gray water, taking a look and for irrigation systems within the village, take a look at requiring water conservation to be built into the automatic irrigation systems. so that they aren't sprinkling when there's rain going on or when the soil is already moist. In terms of stormwater management, we recommend, continuing to promote rain barrels. We would like to review, I think, permeable pavement, although we have concerns about whether they're useful because of the clayey soils here, or whether they get overtopped at some future date. We would like to promote low maintenance, water absorbing plantings for all sorts of different applications, and see if we can have potential test plots for demonstration around the village. We also want to note that the stormwater side, while our stormwater commission has done a good job in identifying tasks to do, there's still more yet to do. There has been an increase in rainfall recently, which the village has noted. But we still need to pay attention and provide opportunities for detention. I think that's it.
Great, thank you. And who's going to present on the tree canopy?
Sorry, unmuting. Claire is going to do that. All right. A couple big items, and then other items fit under those big items. First, item number 206 on the tree matrix. Develop a plan that essentially looks at all green things, planning, planting, and maintenance of them, put it into a coordinated plan that would include trees, plants, heat islands, etc. In keeping with that, I think, and in all the things we've talked about, is the importance to have someone in the village responsible for implementation of these goals that come up in the climate action plan, so that it doesn't become just another document. And it would have to be somebody with interdepartmental and intergovernmental, I don't want to use the word authority, but understanding that their job is interdepartmental and intergovernmental. Then we looked at the existing Parkway tree planting plan. We were wondering if it would be possible to enlarge it to somehow provide trees that go on private property, not just public property, and are there ways to crowdsource trees so that if groups want to, they could provide trees to areas that don't have trees. And also, is there any way to have citizens provided with education about the types, number of trees, placement of trees, and maintenance of trees in their private yards? We did learn some about that. There's a book that Stephen mentioned, and also Kelly shared that Public Works on a limited basis can do that. They just can't be overwhelmed with being everybody's individual landscape planner. But we'd like to look at that. We looked at the idea of incentives to lawn contractors to move to electric, and incentives could include help with equipment purchase or approving different hours of operations. If you have quieter equipment, maybe you could start earlier in the morning, things like that. A lot of education that can and should take place on shifting practices in environmental care and maintenance. And that would include programs like Leave the Leaves, mulching your grass, not bagging it, that native plants are not weeds. If your neighbor's planting something, they're not weeds, they're native plants. And could we have a community tree planting and weed removal volunteer effort to help the village or the park district, like the Forest Preserve does when they go out and have their seed collecting days, or their yard, or their forest clearing days. Let's see. Could the village have a demonstration? I heard what you guys said in stormwater, but could we have a demonstration Parkway native plants? See what a Parkway native planting thing looked like that met line of sight requirements and could be maintained. Okay. We'd like to, number 22 in our list, prioritize planting in underserved areas. That would probably be part of the planning, figuring out what are the underserved areas. Is there a way to provide more shade in parking lots? Our current code is good, but are there incentives to retrofit older parking areas that were done before the code was adopted to include more trees? All right, is there a way to protect connectivity between green spaces so they aren't just separated blocks of green, so that animals can move along them. And the idea was brought up in how can we look at a public-private partnership to help with that? This shouldn't all be on the village. Are there larger companies in Northbrook that would be willing to help us with these connectivity arms so that you can, you know, for instance, get off the train and go to work at Crate and Barrel, or, you know, find your way to the mall in a safe way. Also reduce, number 65, could the village be a leadership in this goal, reduce pesticide usage community-wide? You know, we recognize that's a tough sell because who likes bugs, but there are better ways to do it maybe than what we're doing now. Could the village be a leader in showing us how to do that? Okay, team, that's everything in my list. Did I miss anything big? We're good? All right.
Thank you. And who's going to speak on behalf of the Climate Economy Group? Oh.
Be me. So keep the popards rolling here. So in no particular order, but somewhat grouped, look at ways to promote green businesses to locate to Northbrook. Possibly to offer incentives of some sort. Also, since there aren't really any existing county real estate tax incentives available for that program, possibly lobby the county to see if that's a program that they could initiate. But also to, in our own property tax incentives for businesses, sort of elevate giving points to green businesses or businesses that improve their buildings as part of that. You'd get more points if you took enacted certain green construction efforts. Look at a variety of ways to recognize businesses in the community that are doing green things. So sort of just more than just our annual award, perhaps there's a green certificate or a green sticker that could go out to businesses to recognize that, you know, for 2021, congratulations, please put this green, a green business sticker on your entrance door to promote awareness, but also, you know, sort of recognize that business. If it makes some sense financially, look at the possibility of a sustainability impact fee for new development. It was an example given of a community that did that. And then if you actually did put in place enough green activities, you would not have to pay that fee, or it could get refunded to you. So sort of an offset for that. With demolition and reconstruction activity, do more to promote the repurposing, reuse of building materials. Look at ways to encourage training programs in the green economy, both for students as well as job training efforts locally. With our Buy Local campaign that we are currently promoting, give green reasons why that's a good thing to do too. So, you know, you're not traveling as far, that's helping reduce your carbon footprint. So try and use that as a little kernel of information. Similarly with the efforts we're making in affordable housing, promote workforce housing to live near where you work. And there's certainly green reasons to do that as well. And finally, look at ways in which Northbrook could become sort of a center for green tech. Are there ways in which we can sort of, you know, once we get one business, are there ways to try and attract more so that we become sort of known as the maybe the North Shore Center for Green Technology? That's what I had, but others on the group can chime in.
Excellent. More great breakout discussions. Thank you very much, and good feedback. So we're at the last item on the agenda, which is kind of a next steps and wrap up. The first thing related to that I wanted to share with everybody is, which we didn't explicitly say this before, and so I just wanted to clarify, if the sub-teams would like to, on the tasks between the workshops, if you guys want to work collaboratively, if the whole sub-team wants to work collaboratively, or if there's a few of you in a sub-team that would really like to work together on something, definitely feel free to do that. If you had a good conversation tonight, but you didn't feel like you quite got through what you really wanted to talk to each other about, and you'd like to have another little sub-team breakout, certainly you can feel free to do that as well. If you want help setting up a video link for that, a Zoom link, just let me know. I'm happy to support that in any way I can. So I just wanted to say that the teams should feel free to coordinate collaborative work in any way that you want. So if that's something that interests you, just tap your other teammates and see if there's a few of you or the whole sub team that want to do that. So where we're going next, so the next steps between now and I'm saying February 1st, what I'd like to suggest is take under advisement your conversations here tonight, and now try to focus in the next 3 weeks to get all of your ideas down on paper, so to speak. You don't have to judge them yet. You don't have to worry about if one idea is better than another idea. But what really you want to try to do now is just to purge your mind, to get everything out there, so that if you've got something niggling at you, you've got an idea in the back of your mind. If you didn't have a chance to quite make it through the action finder in some category, and that's totally understandable, just be able to spend the time to make sure you get all the ideas on the paper. And as soon as you feel comfortable that you've done that, you can just send me a note that indicates that you have. If it comes to February 1st and you don't feel like you're there, just let me know, because we can figure out how to kind of renegotiate what the next workshop looks like. But the intent is, if you can get all your ideas out on the paper by February 1st, what we'll do is we'll then start consolidating and organizing. So we're going to take those actions, whether they're added new or they're saved. If you send them in a Word document, whatever, we're going to start trying to compile those. We're going to get rid of everything that doesn't have a comment on it and kind of shortlist it down to just things that the team have commented on. And we're going to try to take a first stab at beginning to organize those relative to the sort of bigger strategic goals. So we're going to start to organize them. It's not going to be, it's not the end of that, it's the beginning of that process. And at our next workshop session, what we're thinking right now, and again, things can change based on where people feel come February 1, but where the next workshop is going to start aiming is starting to look at that shorter list, only the actions that somebody has shown some interest in, and start to review those against the criteria. So you start getting a sense as to how do we feel about those actions as they relate to each other. So that's what we'll be focusing on the next workshop. And again, if sub-teams want to collaborate in advance of that meeting or following that meeting, we can definitely do that too, and I'm happy to help support that, that effort. So that's where we're going. So the next step is to try to keep doing what you've been doing, but to really focus on trying to get all your ideas out, get them in there by February 1st. Again, you can send a Word document if you prefer, whatever feels comfortable to you. And then we'll get that organized in preparation for our next workshop to start evaluating them against criteria. Any questions? Okay. First of all, we'll round up again with a Happy New Year. It's not really been so great so far, but I am absolutely certain it's going to be a beautiful year. And thank you very much, everybody, for spending the beginning of it with us all and for all of your efforts. It really is quite a team. There's a lot of commitment. So thank you so much. And
Thank you,
everybody have a
Thank you,
good night.
Thanks, Ted.
everybody,
Thanks,
and
everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Michaela.
Feel
Thank
free
you
to
all.
email
Great
if
all.
you have questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.